Hello and welcome to my maze game. I'm gonna open the project. Let's start. So first of all, this is the entire code. I'm just gonna run through it, basically line by line, or just part of the code, and just gonna then run so you can see this. I'll leave the code open. Yeah, this is basically the layout of the maze. We have the player positioned up in the corner, and you got the text, welcome to the maze game, controls, WASD, and to win find your way to the exclamation marks and avoid enemies. And also you have your hit points displayed, and every time you hit an enemy you will lose some hit points. Yeah, so let's start out with the code. First of all, we got all the includes like stream and input output, and we got this for random generator. The three next ones I'm not entirely sure if I need those or not. Just have them to be safe. I think this one is for frame rate, which I actually don't use, so guess I could exclude them, but yeah, that's it. And using namespace standard just for all the standards, instead of writing standard in front of like cout and such, just have this piece of line. Okay, the first real piece of code is the struct for my player, and we have the position, which is an integer, and for y, x and y, and we have got the life. I'll explain that later, how we use that. And the char for the player symbol, and it's a char for making symbols. And this part, player, is instead of down in the main code writing like player, and then defining there, I just define it in the struct directly. That's a bit easier. Here we have the maze, which is 16 times 16 in the size, and it's just created by using this, what's it called, hex marks, I think, not sure. And we have the exclamation mark down here, which is kind of the goal of the maze. So basically you can do all kinds of sizes and layouts, I guess. We just have to remember to change the numbers and inputs for where to spawn the player and the enemies later on, if you would like to make it bigger, for example. And this part, the void print maze and the void u1, is two functions created outside of the main function. So this one prints the maze, and this is just normal loops we have for printing the maze, and I'll get back to that in a bit because it's not actually used yet because we haven't called the function from the main. So this just describes the maze, the size, and this is a function called u1, which will be called if you win, and it will basically just reset all the life of the player, the position, it will print the maze and print the player. And since it's not called yet, it's not used. This is the main function, the main part of the code. And first of all, the life of the player and the position and the symbol is defined. And next up is a while loop, and this is pretty important because the entire code, most of the code, is actually made inside this while loop. So as long as the player, the life of the player is greater than 0, it will basically run the game. And first up, the player is printed on inside the maze with the position, player position X and player position Y, which was defined up here. So that's one out the X-axis and one down the Y-axis. So that's it. And the maze is printed, and we got the couts, which we saw in the beginning. The first one is it's just plain text. The next one is I wrote you have, and then the player life, which will decrease if you hit an enemy, and hit points left. Next up we have the enemies. The srand controls or initialize the random number generator. And we have the array of the enemies, and the enemies is just an M, a W, and an E, and you can, since it's a char, you can make some, all sorts of symbols. And we have the random and int called random number, a data type, and it's random modulus 3, so it creates a random number either from 0 to 2, so 0, 1 or 2. The first number in an array is always 0, like this is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. And it generates a random position for the enemy, these two lines. So it will be inside the 16 times 16 maze. And we define the enemy damage, which is 25. Next up is, this just controls that it will print the enemies inside a valid part of the maze. So if it's not exclamation mark, or if it's not this square, like the walls of the maze, it will print a maze. It will print an enemy. It basically just makes sure that you don't print enemies all over the walls, or the what's called the exclamation mark, which is the goal of the maze. And next up we have a big chunk of code, which is the movement of the player. And basically it's like we did with the calculator. We had to have a switch and the cases for each, like an input. And it's from here to break, and it's pretty much the same like with all 4 cases for W, A, S, and D. So I'll just run through one, and the rest is pretty much just copy pasted and with some details changed. First case is for if you press W. First of all, it will print an enemy. Again, it's the same code as before. It checks if it's not placed on the exclamation mark or this square thing. And let's see, this is if the player position X and Y coordinates is not on top of a square thing, it will remove the player while deleting what's there. Like I'll show you. It will actually just print out an empty space inside the maze, so we'll basically just overrun it. I'll just press S for moving down. It moves it down, and it deletes the position it was in before. And you can also see it prints an enemy. And yep, so this player position Y minus minus, since it's W, I wanted to move up in the maze, and as we know, this is the Y axis, but it's different than like a normal Y-X coordinate system. Normally you have 0 down here and X out this way and Y up, but it's Y, it's 0 here and it goes down. So if I want to move up, I wanted to subtract 1 from the Y axis, so that upwards, up towards 0. And the next part checks if I hit an enemy, so that's like M, W, or E. And if I hit an enemy, so if I'm on top of M, W, or E, player life will be equal to player life minus enemy damage, which was 25, so it'll remove 25 damage if I hit one. I can just try it. Let's see if we can find one. This one here. So if I hit this M, I lose 25 hit points. Like that. Yeah, and also it's like the same code as before. It's just with the enemies instead. So it will print out an empty spot in the maze, meaning that it will delete the enemy if I hit one. And it also checks if my player is equal to like placed on the exclamation mark. It will run the U1 function, which we saw before,